real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities Pair of Normal Guys podcast. I am your host, Frater Crow.
I'm your co-host, Daniel James.
And if you're listening in tonight, we apologize for a few-minute delay. We've had a few different technical difficulties this past season. You know, not many, but a couple. And tonight was a rather different one. We got sirens going off here in both Daniel's town and mine. Tornado warnings, get to the basement now. My house has some different things hooked up, within it, like security-wise and things that are connected to broadcasts, and my whole entire house started lighting up and making whistles and fucking sirens. It was wild, folks. So apologize for that, but we wanted to make sure everything was okay. So as long as we don't get taken away by the winds, we will be here to give you a great episode tonight. So as always, make sure you click the like, share, and follow button from whatever platform you're listening from iTunes to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, Google Play, Amazon. You name it, we're on it. Listen where you feel comfortable. Click the buttons to help move us up the podcast community rankings, allow more people to discover the show, keep you in the loop as new episodes air, and as always, give you unfiltered access to past episodes. So if you're listening out there, feel free to ask questions tonight. We're doing a special episode where Daniel and I will just simply be talking over encounters and experiences that we've had throughout our lives with the supernatural and paranormal. Some of the stories you might have heard briefly before us touch upon. Some of them might be brand new to you and we've never really shared before. So hopefully you guys enjoy. If you have questions for us, like I said, don't hesitate to leave us a comment or a question, and you can do that through Spreaker.com or through the Spreaker app by searching Celestial Oddities. And once again, that's Spreaker, Spreaker. That's our hosting company. Great platform to not only listen to the show, but to interact with the show, which we always certainly advise. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. If you are new to us, we air every other Thursday night, 8 to 9 p.m., though after this episode, 2 weeks from now, we will be starting to do 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. We're moving back just a half an hour, and you'll still find the same content, same great show, just a new time. Daniel, I'm excited to hear some of the stories we were going to talk about last episode. We just did not get a chance to. Certainly some things you were going to share with us, and then I've come up with some things, thinking back over different experiences that I've had in investigations and just in life that I think would be fun to talk about. So I'm really excited for tonight.
Yeah, me too, man. So I'm going to tell you guys tonight 3 stories. Okay, these are 3 spooky tales from when I was a teenager growing up in Washington State. Now, I've mentioned on the show before that Western Washington, Olympia, Seattle, Tacoma, it has what's called as ley lines that run underneath the earth and run through the state. And whenever you have ley lines work like a conductor for paranormal activity, and this energy, almost like a vortices or a vortex, can serve as sort of a conduit for entities from other realms and other densities to sort of manifest. And so I have what feels like is countless stories from when I was a teenager of things that I experienced face to face growing up in that area, but I've narrowed it down just to 3 stories, which I feel like if we have time,
folks, we might
hear.
There you are. We lost you for a
some
second.
Of your
Dan.
own stories that you have had parallel. What was the last thing you heard?
I heard you say that, if we have time tonight, and right there, we heard most of everything. I only lost you for about 10 to 11 seconds there, where you just kind of vanished. So we heard most of everything.
Yeah, we're having a tornado warning, folks. So if we cut in and out, it might be a little spotty, but we're doing our best.
And as you just said that, another warning flashed on my phone right now, folks. Extreme alert, National Weather Service, tornado warnings, get to a basement. As I said, we will broadcast this show. We will be here for you in the cockpit as long as we don't hear the winds crunching our house, because if they do, I'm jumping out, and we'll catch you again next episode. But go ahead, continue,
the tornado. This is the tornado taking us to Wonderland or something, because it's weird. All right, so I do have countless stories from this state, but I've narrowed it down to 3. Okay, now growing up in Washington State, to summarize, I have seen shadow people. I've seen countless UFO and extraterrestrial craft. I've seen ghosts, and I've heard voices. But tonight I'm talking about what I call 4th density parasites. Now, these are energy vampires that exist in a different frequency. You could maybe sometimes interpret these beings almost like beings from the fairy realms or from the Fae. If you studied the lore of Fae, they're not like the little pixies that you see Tinkerbells. They're oftentimes very grotesque and horrifying to look at, but that's also another episode. So what I'm talking about is energy vampires. Now, I didn't know what these beings were growing up. I know a lot more about it now, but looking back in retrospect, I have a better understanding of what these creatures were, and I'll begin to explain them over the course of these 3 stories. Frater, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. You're with us, brother.
Okay. So, let me paint a picture for you. I'm in my early teens, let's say maybe 15, 16 years old. Maybe 17 as the stories go on, but in that range. And I live at the top of a hill. It's a very small residential district. It's private in Mud Bay, Olympia, Washington. So the houses are spaced apart quite a bit. They're very private. It's not like a suburban sort of neighborhood, and it's on a very steep hill. Almost kind of like something you'd see in like Edward Scissorhands, We were the small house tucked in the woods at the top of this private residential hill. And behind us we had a Christmas tree field. Down the hill to our right we had a creek. And then at the bottom was the houses. But like I said, they were all very private. There weren't really a lot of kids or anybody that messed around or played at night. I was pretty much the troublesome neighbor, okay? I was the kid that went up in the night. So there was nobody up there meddling. So this brings me to story number 1. I was going out to dinner with a friend. Pat and I went out to dinner when I was younger, and he was bringing me home to drop me off, and we parked in my driveway. And just to the left of my driveway, there was a small string of Christmas trees that were spaced apart quite a bit, and then there was like a warehouse sort of building that was part of my neighbor's property. He was a woodsmith, and he had a big warehouse where he built beautiful carpentry things. But this is an older guy. He's retired, and he was never outside of his house past 7, 8 o'clock at night. So Pat and I get out, and we're sitting by his truck, and we're just chatting a little bit. We're making jokes. Well, there was a gentleman at the time that was having some issues with my family, and we made a joke because he'd kind of been the source of some conversation. We made a joke that he'd be lurking around. And so we're sitting there bullshitting, and mind you, my mom and my stepdad, they would often go out for dinner or they'd go out for drinks in the evening, late into the night, and I was often home alone at this spooky house at the top of the hill in the woods. So Pat is getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden we hear something walking through the woods at this small Christmas tree line that is up against the wall of this warehouse, and it's what looks exactly like a red reflector that you'd see on the back of somebody's bicycle. So this story is going to be called The Red Light Stalker. Okay?
I love it.
You can picture this, right? You know those blinking lights that they'll wear when they're riding their bikes or they're walking at night to notify vehicles, right? So it's a red flashing light. So all 20 feet, that's how close this is, 15, 20 feet. And we look into the woods and we see about maybe chest high or waist high this red blinking light. And it's just leisurely and very slowly walking through the Christmas tree field up against this man's warehouse building. And once again, I know this gentleman. He is not the type of guy to go outside meddling or looking around, especially on our side of the property. He just was never out there. Okay, so Pat and I look over there, and we kind of tilt our heads, and we're like, that's kind of weird. So Pat makes a joke, and he's like, oh, hey, and he he's waving to the creepy guy that we've been having some issues with our family at the time. And that was just a joke because we were trying to make levity of how strange it was that it could maybe be the creepy stalker guy that is mad at, arguing with our family at the time. But so the red light disappears, and we make a joke about it, and I don't think two things about it. And so Pat ultimately leaves. I go in the house, and this is back when we had dial-up. I mean, this is back in AOL Instant Messenger. Okay, that's how old I am. So I go inside. Mom and her boyfriend are gone. I'm home alone. Pat leaves. I get on AOL Instant Messenger and MSN, and I'm chatting, BSing with my friends. And all of a sudden, my dog, Crystal, she was a border collie lab mix, and she was very protective and very aggressive, and she was an outdoor dog. Well, this is 10 minutes after Pat leaves. I'm on the computer. I start hearing my dog go crazy outside. She's barking, and running around out front like she's she's in protective mode. She's angry. She's very hostile. And it's pitch black up there on the top of this hill. You can't see anything outside my house. We had one small little floodlight, that faces the driveway, and that's it. And Crystal's going crazy. So I was listening to music at the time. I turned the music off, and I go to my bedroom at the end of the house, a very small house, and my bedroom has a large window that Crystal used to sleep underneath in the dirt outside my window, kind of to protect me. And I kind of turned the lights off because I'm getting a little freaked out now. Crystal's going crazy. All of a sudden, I hear Crystal barking, and then I hear this do, 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 go running past my window, very large, heavy footsteps. And I hear Crystal shortly behind chasing whatever this thing is past my window. Now, mind you, I've got my blinds of my window open, and my window is cracked a little bit to let fresh air in. And it's about, it's not off the ground or anything. It's chest level to the window is chest level. And you can't see anything because it's pitch black up there. And I hear this thing run by my window, but I can't see. And I hear Crystal chasing it, and she's barking. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I back up, close my blinds, slam my window shut, lock it, and I go back to the den where the computer desk is, and I hear something scuffling around outside and Crystal barking like crazy. So then I walk to the middle of the house, and Crystal seems to have stopped on one end of the house, and she's barking at one end. And she's moving around a little bit. She makes her way to the backyard. She's going crazy, and she's barking at the house now. So then I listen. It's dead quiet. The lights are off. I'm a teenager, and I'm alone in the woods, and I'm freaked out. And then all of a sudden, I hear this fucking pacing on my roof. Now, I don't have a ladder or any access to my roof, and to get up on the roof or the shed of the roof would have been about 9 feet to get up there. And I hear pacing on the roof, slowly walking back and forth, 2 steps, not like 4 legs, but like 2 legs, walking, do, do, do. And Crystal's going apeshit. She's out of her mind, running around the house, jumping up against the walls of the house to try to get up there. And at this point, I'm so freaked out, and I'm younger, and I this is way pre-spiritual awakening of any kind, so I'm just totally immersed in the fear of what's happening, because whatever this thing was got up onto my roof, which is like 9 feet. It outran my dog, okay, who this dog, mind you, has defended me from people attacks, dog attacks, cat attacks, all of these things that could harm me. My dog has been there and protecting me from. So this thing was able to outrun her. And I called Pat. because my mom and Gary didn't have cell phones at the time. Cell phones kind of still weren't super popular back when I was a teenager. And if you did have one, it was like an Android, like it was like a analog, like Nokia, right? So it wasn't like a lot of people had those yet. So I couldn't call my mom and Gary. And so I called Pat because he had a cell phone. And he had only been gone 20 minutes. And him and my mom and Gary were close friends. So sometimes they would actually go to his house. So I called Pat, and I'm upset, and I'm starting to choke up, and I'm like, Pat, are my mom and Gary with you? And he goes, no, they actually never came here. I thought maybe they'd come by, but they didn't. And I said, okay. He's like, Daniel, what's wrong? You sound upset. And I'm like, I don't want to tell him. I was embarrassed to tell him what was happening because it was so paranormal and supernatural. I didn't think he would believe me because he just wasn't the type. So I said, I'm okay. And he goes, Daniel, do you need me to come back? Is somebody there? Are you okay? I was like, it's fine. It's totally okay, Pat. I'm sure my mom and Gary will be home soon. It's all good, man. And I hung up, and I still hear this thing pacing. Okay? So flash forward maybe 30, 45 minutes, my mom and her boyfriend come home, and just as they come home, Crystal had calmed down, and I told them what happened. Okay, so as we tie up story number 1, the red light stalker, Pat and I don't know what that red flashing light was, but it looked exactly like one of those bicycle reflectors that you would wear at night to notify a vehicle that you're in the street. But it was moving very slowly, and it was about waist high of an average-sized man. And I could tell you that no human would have been able to get past my dog without getting attacked and get up on my roof. So I don't know what that creature was that night, but it terrified me, and that was one of the first supernatural or paranormal esoteric experiences that I had on that house. And as we go on into story number 2 and 3, I will give you guys a much more definitive explanation as to what was happening, but I ordered these in a specific way to sort of paint a picture as to what these things are, okay? We're not dealing with humans. We're not dealing with demons. We're not dealing with aliens. It's something else entirely. You follow me so far, Frater?
I absolutely am, and it makes me think, almost of like a Mothman. And the reason I say that is that there has been, from accounts that I've heard from people that have witnessed similar, and, just reading other people's accounts in history, a lot of times I have heard and seen people talk about seeing red lights or red glowing eyes from something that's moving very quickly at a high altitude across treetops, across roofs, and that makes me think of that. So no, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say with story 2 and 3, but that is what, when you were saying that, I'm thinking it almost sounds like a cryptid, and it sounds like a Mothman type creature, and right away I'm thinking, well, what area did he say he was in again? But I remember you say you were in Olympia, Washington, and that is a very dense wooded area and state. That makes sense, because most of the areas that it comes from, or you hear the sightings of similar creatures to Mothman, they're always in very dense forested areas. So very interesting.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a fourth story that I can add, that I feel like I will add for the sake of you having mentioned that.
Please do.
And I feel like it'll tie in these very well, okay? So story number 2, you still hear me good?
Absolutely.
Story number 2. We're going to call this one Mr. Fingers, okay? Flash forward, some time has passed, maybe months, maybe a year or two, I don't know. I lived in this house for several years. I lived in this house for 5 years. So I'm sitting at the computer again. I'm on AOL Instant Messenger, maybe MSN. I don't quite remember. It's not terribly important to the story, is it? But I am sitting at my computer.
And there goes the sirens again.
And the sirens are back. Very apropos to the story.
As you see, folks, we are not bullshitting you when we say about the tornado warnings.
Can you hear that coming through my mic?
Oh, absolutely. I hear it whistling hard, and they were going off here earlier. And like I said, my phone's going off several times. So,
Dorothy, it's like there's no place like home tonight, man. All right. So, Mr. Fingers, I'm sitting at my computer, chatting again. It's late into the night. My mom and her boyfriend are away again. And if you can picture this real quick, we had a living room and a den, okay? We were in the living room where the computer was, and the den was smaller towards my bedroom. So to get to my kitchen, I mean, they're connected. My kitchen and my living room are connected, but in between the two is a hallway that leads to the bathroom and to the den. Now, we had a wood stove. You burnt wood in. That was our heating source, our main heating source for the house. And what we would do is, in order to keep the heat partitioned into the living room and the kitchen, we would just hang a curtain that in the hallway that separated the bathroom hallway and the den that led to our bedrooms. So there was always a curtain screen hanging down there, right? So I get up and I walk to the kitchen to get a drink, and just very casually, very leisurely, I glance to my right, and out of the corner of my eye, as I'm turning my head, I see the screen, just happen to look at it, right? And there's this hand, okay, comes around the corner of the curtain. And the first thing you see are these long, bony fingers with long black fingernails. And the fingers had to be like, I'm talking 3 times the length of a normal person. So if you're listening right now, look down at your hand. You see the length of your fingers? Triple that. 5 fingers, okay? Come around this curtain slowly and push the curtain back. And as this thing pushes the curtain back, he reveals his face. It was male energy. It was masculine energy. And I'm looking at what looks like as like a very bony, dark-skinned creature with long, like greasy hair, almost down to its shoulders. And it almost looked like the guy from Iron Maiden. You remember, like, the Iron Maiden band? They have like that zombie sort of dude on the
Eddie.
cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Eddie. It kind of looked like that, like almost like skeletal. He had skin, but it was like dark brown, and he had black beady eyes, not very large eyeballs, but his hair. I remember his long greasy hair and his fingers. And he was fucking smiling, dude. That was the worst part. He pushes this curtain back and he's smiling and he's looking at me. And I remember his long hair going down towards his shoulder. And I actually drew this thing so that people could see what I saw. But I caught it out of my corner of my eye, and I turned and looked, and I jumped like I was totally shocked. And then it's like the dude just vanished out of thin air. He existed long enough in my reality for me to see the full-bodied apparition and get a good, clear look at what he looked like physically. Right, like he disappeared in front of me. And then the curtain fell just back. It was pushed in a little bit so he could reveal himself, and then the curtain fell back. I don't know, maybe if he backed up. I can't quite remember if he backed away or if he kind of dissolved. But I remember freaking the fuck out, and I ran to my front door and I let my dog in, because like I said, she was an outdoor dog. We didn't generally bring her inside unless it was winter. She slept inside during the winter, but I let her in, and she came and she patrolled the house, and she didn't find anything. But dude, I'm telling you, man, I saw it. I saw long fingers with black fingernails, stringy greasy hair, sort of like a skinny bony face, and he was smiling. Okay? So that's the story of Mr. Fingers. I never saw him again in that house. I never saw him again ever. But that creature manifest, face to face. These things only seem to happen when my mom and my stepdad were gone. So that's the story of Mr. Fingers, and that brings me to story number 3. Okay? So story number 3, in my opinion, was worse than this in terms of fear. And when I talk about fear, and I mentioned to you that we're dealing with 4th density parasites, we're talking about energy vampires. There are creatures that exist in other frequencies, other realms of existence that are not our physical 3D reality. And these types of things exist there. And they can bleed into our reality, sometimes with the help of what I call ley lines, or maybe on celestial events, or maybe if they just, densify their energy and the person is in the right state of being to match their frequency, they can get into our physical reality briefly. This brings me to story number 3, and I am going to mention story number 4 very briefly after this because it ties into your theory as well. But I'm going to talk about one of my ex-girlfriends now. When I was a teenager, I was dating a girl who used to come stay at this house with me. From time to time, she'd come stay over. And she was a little bit of a night owl. One thing I remember about her is we would always go out to restaurants late and have coffee and have get-togethers with her friends. This girl was commonly up till 3, 4 in the morning. So it was often an endurance challenge to kind of hang with her and her friends because they were just creatures of the night themselves. And so she would always come over and spend the night with me. And one night, her and I were laying in bed, and my bedroom was very small, okay? It was actually an addition that was built onto the house, and just to have another bedroom. So it was super, super small. And like I mentioned, I had a large window with blinds that was about chest high to me at the time as a teenager, and my dog Crystal would commonly sleep in the dirt outside my window if she wasn't in her house, which was on the other side of the building. So her and I are laying in bed, and we often would turn the TV off and just lay there and listen to the rain, because Washington State rains 8 months out of the year. We'd listen to the rain together, or we would talk, share stories, or just lay there in the dark until we fell asleep. And her and I, when we were together, we were magnets for this type of thing. And that's why I want to tell you about story 4 here in a minute. But her and I would experience these types of encounters, these beings, these creatures, these otherworldly entities all the time together. And I could actually tell you guys about 3 or 4 more with just her and I experiencing together. But this one really got to me, man. I don't know where Crystal was, okay? She actually might have been in the house, because in the winter when it was really cold, we brought her inside. And that's got to be the case here. And I would close my door and she'd be in the den where the heat was. So we're laying in bed, and I have this OCD about my windows. I don't know about you, but I have to sleep with a window cracked. Even if it's winter, I need fresh air coming in my bedroom or my house. It's just like an air quality thing. I can't have a stuffy house, so I always have the window cracked, even if it's just a little bit, right? So I have my window opened a little bit, maybe about, say, 2 inches. But I had a screen on. There was a screen. I almost said her name. I'm sorry. She's going to hear this. I'm going to send this to her. I just don't want to blow up her spot. But her and I were still awake, and we're laying in bed, and all of a sudden I hear something at the window, and it's at the screen. So I hear what sounds like as a scraping sound, like a scrape on the screen of my window, and it sounds like something sharp is dragging against it or picking at it, right? That's better. Maybe something sharp is picking at the screen of my window. And Kara and I kind of she tenses up a little bit, and she kind of gives me that sort of out of the corner of her eye, you hear that? And I'm like, yeah. So we're laying there, and I hear this dragging sound along the window. It's subtle. It's quiet, but you got to remember that this bedroom is super small, okay? So I'm just out of a reach distance from my window. That's how close it is. So it sounds very visceral, okay? It's dead quiet in the woods with the TV off and the window open. And so Kara starts getting uncomfortable, and I start to go into protective mode. I said her name. God damn it. I'm sorry, Kara. I start to get into protective mode, and I start to tense up because we're hearing something at the window, and this isn't the first time that her and I have experienced these things. And as the picking is, like the scratching is going on, you start to hear this fucking voice, dude. And this voice is burned into my memory as like one of the most terrifying things that you can kind of feel. Like this sound doesn't come from anything that you know in your continuity of reality. And I hear like this. I'm gonna do it, okay? Because this is a paranormal show, and I kind of want to creep you guys out a little bit if I can. I mean, come on, it's October. It's almost Halloween.
Absolutely, please do.
I'm gonna try to make the sound that this thing made into my fucking window, into the crack of what's open of my window through the screen, as it's picking with what sounds like to me like sharp claws, like sharp fingernails. It starts to like make this vocalization, and me and Kara are already freaked out. And it goes like this, okay? It goes like that, like kind of like salad fingers. You ever hear salad fingers? Kind of sounded like salad fingers. He's like that, like it was almost saying words, but more so just kind of like breathing heavy and making a little noises as it breathed. And my girl goes, and I fucking jump out of bed, dude. I shoot out of bed. I slam my window shut, lock it, close the blinds, I jump back in bed, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? And she's like, don't talk about it. She's just like, I don't know. You know what? Let's go to sleep. And I was like, I'm okay. But you heard that, right? She's like, yes, I heard that. And this thing was like, it was vocalizing, dude. It was vocalizing through the crack of like the 2 little inch crack of that my window was open, clawing at the screen. And my dog was inside because it was winter. Okay?
That's
now that
wild,
sound,
man.
the sound, bro. And I'm up in the woods, okay? There are no kids that live out there that are ever going to come in my neck of the woods and prank me or tease me or do anything like that. It was mostly wealthy, well-off, older people that lived on this street. So there's nobody out there to do these kinds of things, to mess with some teenage kid and his girlfriend. Okay? It was just, dude, it creeped me out so bad. Having seen that thing peek around the curtain of my hallway, I could only assume that it was one of those creatures outside my window now with his long black claws poking at my screen. So flash forward the next day, her and I wake up, and I remember I think I checked the screen, and there was a part of the screen that was torn a little bit. Much higher than anywhere like my dog or any animal would ever meddle. So that happened, okay? That happened. So we have the red light stalker, we have Mr. Fingers, and the story of it's coming through the window is what we'll call it. So those are 3 tales of entities or creatures or beings from other realms that are not demonic, they are not angelic, they are not extraterrestrial, they are not human spirit, they're something else. And I will give you guys the 4th bonus story, which it pertains to you mentioning the Mothman. Now, I studied a lot of stories of that creature. I'm very familiar with that being and its race. I actually think it's a species. And I know that they were stalkers, and I know that they were very scary, and I know that they caused hallucinations. But I never read stories of them being like malevolent and mischievous, because the energy that I'm feeling here from these creatures is mischievous. When they break the 4th wall, when they break that sort of prime directive, no contact order of like their world and ours, you gotta know that they're malevolent. You gotta know that they're meddling and they're being mischievous, and they're trying to evoke fear. Spiritual chemical response out of the human. because, like I mentioned, as vampires, it's like they thrive on it, almost like they feed on it, right? So story number 4, though, the same girlfriend at the time who would always come down and stay with me at night, she told me one time that when she was right around the corner of my house, after you get off like the thruway in Mud Bay, and then you get to my back road, she said she was driving down the road and she saw a giant winged creature fly over her car. And it was the first thing that she told me when she got to my house. That, hey, she's like, hey man, it happened again. I saw another one. That's how common these things were for her and I, that we were running into these things, these 4th density energy vampires, that she saw a giant large wingspan thing fly over her car. Now, she kind of said that it almost looked like a pterodactyl, I think, maybe. She could correct me if I'm wrong. But like a winged thing. Now, we all know that the Mothman flies, and it has been known to fly over people's vehicles. It's been known to cause technological interference in their cars as well. I don't know if we're dealing with sort of a Mothman type of situation, but I did live in a rural area. I did live on the Puget Sound. I did live in the woods. Her and I had so many experiences together that it almost like gives me peace knowing that somebody else was there, because having her experiencing the same things that I experienced, it validates that it happened, that it wasn't something that you were hallucinating or that you just sort of, maybe you saw it but you didn't know. These are things that we're experiencing audibly and visually together as a couple. And I even sat down and I drew all this stuff. Like her and I saw another one, and I don't want to. We have 20 minutes of the show left, Frater, and I don't want to hog the whole episode. I want you to tell a story of your own. But there was one more. I'm going to give you guys one more bonus. Number 5, the headless. The headless. I called him the headless, muscle-bound creature. Her and I were on the beach. This is almost kind of like close to the border of Canada in Washington State, and it was called Ocean Shores. And her and I drove up there. It was like I don't know, like a 2-hour drive, maybe a 2.5-hour drive. And we were up there really late, and we were sitting on the beach together, very romantic, and where it's pitch black, and the wind's blowing, and you've got the trees, or excuse me, the water, breaking, and it's very beautiful. And all of a sudden it very lightly starts to rain a little bit, and the moon's out. You can see the moon cutting through the clouds, and her and I are sitting there on the beach side by side, and we're not even talking. We're just like in the moment, vibing out. And all of a sudden, maybe like just to our left, I was on her left, she was on my right, just to my left, probably about 25 feet in front of us, I see this haze, like a blurry kind of interference, almost like a something kind of bleeding into my physical reality, like an interference type of thing. And all of a sudden materializes in front of us this hulking, muscle-bound shape that is like 9 feet tall, dude. 10 feet tall, just towering up in the moonlight. And it's headless. It's got arms. You see its shoulders. It looks like a muscle builder, like a weightlifter, like a professional weightlifter. Those guys that are like super jacked, like super cranked. It looked like one of those guys, like 10 feet tall, and it didn't have a head. And you could see its definition so clearly in the moonlight that I could tell that it had hands, and its fists were clenched, like it was making fists, like it was kind of flexing at us. And it's just materialized from thin air into this solid shape. It's glistening in the moonlight. I look at Kara. She looks at me. We both fucking see it. And she goes, "We should leave." And we stood up. I grabbed her hand. And we fucking book it through the sand back up towards the parking lot where our cars were. And like that buzz, that sort of like, you know, something's right behind you and you don't want to turn around and look at it, because if you turn around and look, like, that's it, that's the end, right? And we could feel that tingling sensation on our backs, and we're just walking, and we finally get back to our cars, and we're both like out of breath, and we're kind of in shock. I'm definitely in shock. And it was one of those things again between her and I where it's like, did you see that? You saw it, right? And she's like, I saw it. And I'm like, what did it look like? And she explains it, and I'm like, that's what I saw too. And she's like, it didn't have a head. And I was like, it didn't have a head. And these things, dude, these things happened to her and I for like 2 straight years. I feel like the whole time that I knew this girl, from like dating to the point that we were in a relationship, these things followed us. And I don't know if she ever talks about these experiences the way that I do and that I tell people, but I know that her and I have talked about them, and they happened. These things exist. These things are real. I call them fourth density vampires or fourth density parasites, because we are third density physical beings, and you have all of these other realms of existence where there is intelligent life that exists in other frequency bands of reality. You've got fourth density, which is a quasi-physical sort of state, and then you've got fifth density, which is another physical realm just like you and I. Sixth density is more of like an astral sort of ethereal realm for the fifth density, so on and so forth. These fourth density beings, even though they're a higher frequency than us, doesn't mean that they're all good and love and light. No, there are creatures and there are malevolent beings that exist in every realm of existence, in every frequency band. There is some form of these things. Okay? And so there you have it, folks. It has been story time with Daniel James from Olympia, Washington. When I was a teenager, I was harassed by these creatures, and I needed to get it off my chest.
No, I'm glad you did, man. I think that certainly some interesting experiences and encounters. Think that, you know, are they connected? Are they not? That's the question. And like you said, I mean, there could be a mixture of different things happening. I mean, the sighting of something over the car, flying through, you know, the wooded area, the thing crawling across your house, the red lights, you know, very, very reminiscent of Mothman, as you said. But if it felt like a presence of malevolence, then maybe not. I mean, as you said, a lot of times, it's hard to say that, though, because there's a lot of people who've spotted the Mothman and said that they were terrified. Now, was it because that thing was dangerous or bringing fear from them, or was it just because of something so shocking caused them to be in fear? You know, that's the big question. But very interesting that, as you said, sometimes things slip through the doorway to cause fear. They don't really try to attack us necessarily. The long-fingered creature made sure that you've seen him. He made sure that he struck fear in you by not only showing his long fingernails and smiling at you. I mean, who knows if that's even his true form or appearance, or if he can make you see that. Right. And maybe they can cause themselves to project whatever they want to in your mind, almost like It from Stephen King. I mean, he would change forms and cause your fear to come to life. Maybe that's what these things do, and if you notice, they don't really attack you. They just did that, caused the massive amount of fear and adrenaline, pulled from that energetically, and then vanished again. As you said, you know, energy vampires, and they don't really, I mean, I guess you could still call them malevolent, but they're not malevolent in the sense that they wish to kill or harm you. They wish to just steal your energy. I guess if you killed something, you can't use it as a battery. But if they know they can come back time and time again and get a nice juice from it, they probably want to keep you around. So maybe they're nice and they're just feeding off you. Maybe, you know, they are malevolent fully, because just because something is opposite of what our nature is doesn't make it bad. A parasite or a leech even isn't a bad creature. It's doing its own nature, but it's against ours. So we consider things like that to be bad. So you just have to wonder, you know, what were they simply just jumping in real quick saying, hey, I can scare the shit out of this kid and get a juice up and then vanish again because I'm making a journey right now through different doorways and I need some extra juice for the ride? Or, you know, were they planning something beyond that? Why did they return again and again? Why were there different experiences? Were they the same creature coming off as multiple things? Were they all of the same race and there was just multiple creatures? or were they just, for some reason, a hotbed of activity there, and all kinds of things were traveling through the gates? So that's really where you go to question with that. And Washington is one of the states that just has a abundance of activity and paranormal occurrences, which is fascinating. There's certain states that seem, for some reason or another, that is where, 10 times the amount of activity anywhere else happens in these 15 states. The rest of the country doesn't equal those 15. So it's very, very interesting, Dan. I definitely liked hearing what you had to say. Some of that I've heard fragments of over time, but I've never got to hear all of the stories fully, which is great.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate you listening, you and the viewers listening, and giving me the platform to sort of express it, because I had gone on as I got older in that state, particularly to see more UFOs, more shadow people. I did actually see more similar things to this, to the creatures that I described tonight, in my following relationship. But I feel like it was really local to Olympia, Washington, in that area, because as I moved out of the state, a lot of that sort of activity sort of died off, in a sense that I don't know if I just became a mismatch in frequency to those creatures, and they no longer were attracted to me, or I found new ways to protect and shield myself from that type of energy. But as I got older, those experiences did taper off and then totally stop. But I would say very local to my teenage years, very local to Olympia, Washington, it was just a hot spot for that type of experience. And I feel like they were really attracted to me, because it kind of seemed like no matter who I was with, those things would occur, and then I would have somebody with me to validate them. And another ex-girlfriend of mine actually was a remote viewer. Even in her younger years, she taught herself how to astral project and remote view, and she went to that house in astral, in remote viewing. And when you're sort of in a lucid out of body perspective, you can tap into some of the other entities and realms around the physical 3D realm. And she told me that when she had viewed my house, that there was all kinds of just shapes swimming around the property and swimming around the house, different shapes and sizes, blurry images, dark black sort of shapes that were sort of swimming around the property. And another thing she said, which was really weird, was that there was a giant female woman, like a giant woman that was bigger than the house, that was in astral, mind you. She's in some sort of plasmatic plane. She said that this woman was like kneeled down next to the house, like with her arms on the roof. And this is something that another one of my ex-girlfriends had seen in remote viewing. So that was very strange. I thought that I would add that maybe you're more of an expert on this, Frater, than I am, but maybe it's the geography. Maybe it's the history of the house. Maybe these things were attracted to me and following me around. But there you have it.
I mean, it could be a number of different things. I mean, as you said, I think it's obvious, whether it's you or not, I think that the land and the energy there and a portal system of some sort, wormholes, have to be present in that area, around the house in the woodland area there, and they're traveling through that. Now, once again, it brings up the question you have to ask, that is it constantly going on and then most of us just don't see it and only certain people are tuned into it, or are they allowing certain people to see it? Mm-hmm. That would be the big question. Is maybe that's happening every day all over the place there, but 98% of the people don't even notice it. They don't care to show them. They pick out people that are special for some reason. And I've thought about that as well, as if you're a vampire and, of sorts, whether you're drinking blood or whether you're drinking energy, obviously we believe that energy is the true form of vampirism. You have to wonder, do they get a different high or a different boost from different types of people? If you're constantly draining regular people who don't see anything, have no occult abilities, have no psychic abilities, anything like that, and then you drain from someone who does, is there a difference in the result that entity gets? So sometimes, we look at it as we're special. We look at it as, oh, yeah, I see these things, or I've experienced these things. Maybe you only do because you have something different about you that they make sure you see them. And I've wondered that before, that I can go to a paranormal location with a group of people, and often do, and wild stuff happens to either myself or anyone specifically with me. And then I'll get back with a group and talk to them, and some people will be like, yeah, a little bit happened here and there, a little bit here and there. And then the people that I'm with are like, I just had my mind blown. For case in point, I talked a little bit about it a couple episodes ago, but I went to Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum with a group of several people from all over the country. The one girl that had traveled there, she was from the middle of the country, and she was going to meet up, and I was going to have form groups of different people, and she was going to tag along with this other lady that was coming, who actually canceled last minute right before even showing up, like a couple hours before driving to West Virginia for this event. She was coming from, I believe, Michigan, and she had to drop off for personal reasons. So it left this other girl kind of stranded with a partner that she was going to team up with. I was going to go solo most of the night, which I enjoy doing. So I had said to her, do you want to tag along with me? Now, throughout the night, we had some of the most mind-crippling events that have ever happened to anybody. I mean, it was the type of night that if you never experienced anything again the rest of your life, you would have got your fill. But the rest of the group there, same building, same methods and things for the most part, didn't seem to experience that. Why does this seem to happen or follow me all the time? And this has been countless time and time again, so I have to wonder, is it something that I have going on that causes these chain reactions to happen, or do they show up to interact with me for a specific reason? Is it just because I'm more tuned in, or do they feed off something that I'm projecting off of me that others don't project? It's been a question that I'm still trying to find the answers for, and I have to wonder. But as far as stories, I would like to talk, just a quick one of something that happened recently. I had returned for like the 6th or 7th time at the Bel Air Shadow or Bel Air Demon House in Bel Air, Ohio. I've investigated there many weekends. You stay there, folks, all night. You can rent it for a day, 2 days, whatever have you. We would always do Friday to Sunday, so we would get there 12 o'clock on Friday, leave 12 o'clock on Sunday. We would spend about 48 hours in this very, very haunted and demonic house. And this last time I went, no one else on the team could join me until the very early mornings of Saturday. So I got there around 12 in the afternoon and didn't have anybody else on the team show up until 4:30 in the morning that night, or I guess you would call Saturday morning. So I was there for quite a long time, and you're talking, 16 hours alone in this home. Now, after dark struck, I left all the lights out. I lit some candles. I did some ceremonial things that I am into, and I just kind of sat and listened. Now, what was very strange about this event is there's loss of time, throughout these events and throughout investigations, but never exactly like this. I would be sitting in the summoning room, and I would need something in the other room. I would walk over to my bag, get the thing out of it, whether it be a battery or another camera or something of that nature. I would look at my watch when I stood up to go into the room. I'd walk into the room, get in my book bag, dig out what I needed, look around a little bit, walk back to the room, sit down. Now, this happened about 3 or 4 times throughout this night where I would do that, and when I would look at my watch, from the time I walked out of the room 20 feet away to the time I got back to my chair, which seemed only to be 2-3 minutes at most, 45 minutes would be gone. And I didn't notice it much while I was in it until the next day when I started gaining my faculties again. It only seemed to do this specifically when I was there by myself. When everybody else showed up, I didn't have that happen. No, there was a bunch of other activity that did happen. It was literally blanking out periods of time. And the one time I was kind of cognizant of it, the last time that it happened, that I looked specifically at my watch, walked into the other room, dug out the cords that I needed, back into that room, because I was trying different experiments throughout the night, and I walked right back, sat down. Could have been no more than 2 minutes. I looked at my watch, and over a half an hour had gone by. And I sat dumbfounded, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I don't understand. Is my watch malfunctioning? And I grabbed another watch. I grabbed my cell phone. I usually keep it off. I turn my cell phone off, and I'm like, no, the time's gone. So I was in a matter of 20 feet losing half an hour to 45 minutes at a time, 3 to 4 times throughout the night. So fast forward to the next night, I'm trying to channel. I do channel. Daniel does channeling as well in a little bit of a different format than I do. I do more of the spiritual side and with demons and with ghosts and apparitions. Daniel does more with alienistic intelligences. So we kind of understand what each other does in different platforms. I was trying to channel during this session on Saturday evening, and normally I can either have amazing breakthroughs or at least something happen. I was getting shut out over and over and over again, where I almost felt like something was blocking me and not letting me get there. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to the restroom. I'm going to, kind of splash some water on my face, kind of take a moment. I walked into the restroom, splashed water on my face, as I said, collected myself, and I'm like, all right, let's go back and try again. As I walked out of the bathroom, I felt like a metaphysical brick cracked me in the face. I can't explain it. I felt literally energy as if someone ran through my body. And it just threw me. And as it did it, I don't remember anything that happened for the next several minutes. When I came back to, I was still standing. So it was almost like I didn't know something had happened. I felt like it was only a second. I felt that energy, but all of a sudden I realized, like, what am I doing? And I was standing in the kitchen staring at a pizza box at the oven. And I walked back in the room, and they had all noticed that I'd been gone for a while. And they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. They're like, you'd been gone in a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I sat down, and the one girl that was there started telling a story about a past lover of hers that she was with, her, I don't know if it was her husband or her boyfriend, but he had passed away, unfortunately. And I tried to talk, to say something, and I just giggled, and then I went, and everyone there turned and looked at me like, what? And I noticed I did it, and I'm like, what the hell was that? I could think clearly. I could think my thoughts. And as I went to speak again, I was like, and they're all looking at me, and they're like, are you okay? And in my own mind, I'm like, what is going on right now? And then I felt whatever it was try to overtake me. I could feel it literally trying to possess me. And I hurried up and closed my eyes, and I used different practices that I use ceremonially to push out whatever this was and get back to a center of aura and to a middle place that you need to really ground. And I did this, and within a matter of 15 to 20 seconds, all of a sudden, my voice was back, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm like, I don't know what that was. And they're like, wow, you're very, very white, Frater. Are you okay? They're like, you don't look so good. And I'm like, no, I'm better now. But this was an interaction that I had recently in the last few months that I wanted to share, that, I'm a paranormal investigator. I've investigated a lot of places. A lot of times you're fine. A lot of times it's benevolent energies or entities. But folks, there is very malicious energies out there that will try to attack you, drain from you, as Daniel said. They will try to possess you. They will try to destroy you in some cases because they don't care who you are or what you are. And sometimes people joke at that, and they make, and that's why we always say don't poke, fun at a ghost or be rude to and disrespectful, because sometimes, it's just a regular spirit and they can't do anything. But every now and again, you'll come across something that isn't supposed to be there, or that is there and it's ancient and it's been there a long time. And it has no problem absolutely destroying and fucking your life up, and it will happen. In this house, I watched, a year prior to this experience, someone get possessed fully and start talking in tongues, start spitting on the floor, face contortions, just things you would imagine seeing in a Hollywood movie, I seen in real life. And this isn't the first time I've seen this. This is kind of the work that I do, but I've seen it happen in this home. And most people think I was crazy to go there for an entire night alone by myself in the dark, but that is the type of research that I do. I feel if you don't push the boundaries, you don't break through the doorways. And that's what I was trying to do this night. But I got a slap in the face for it, because I normally always keep my guard up. And I was trying to break through and channel, and it wouldn't let me do it. It wouldn't let me do it. And the one girl was a medium. And, she has a little bit of psychic ability. And she had told me afterwards, I think the reason that you couldn't tap in is that not the thing that attacked me, but something else there was holding me back, because if I would have tapped through into the intelligence of this home, something horrible was going to happen. And I actually believe when she told me that, because there's no reason for her just to randomly say that. She said, Frater, I think something was trying to help you and stop you, because something else was waiting for you to tap through, and it would have been very bad for you. And it made a lot of sense with everything else that happened that night, the lapses of time, and then just wild activity that started to happen. So that is my story, folks. I wanted to share. There's many, many more, but I figured that'd be one I would like to kind of throw out there to everyone, of true possession or entities trying to possess. Most will never experience it, and for the most part, I hope most of you never do. But possessions do happen. There are entities out there. It doesn't mean that they're, demons or demonic entities doing this. Sometimes it's just an interdimensional intelligence or a shadow being of sorts, or some type of astral vampire that does come through, and it just happens to find the right person at the right time, or it's strong enough to overtake you, and these things do happen. So that is my story, folks, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. No, it's really appropriate to what we've been discussing.
No, I think it is. Yeah, certainly. I think that was what it was trying to do. Is it was trying to cause fear. No, I stayed very calm about it all, but I think whatever this was trying to get me riled up. Or it could have even tried to get back at me, because, as I said, I had to perform an exorcism the year before that, to remove whatever this entity was from the gentleman who became possessed in the house during a weekend investigation. And there's a very good chance that it held some type of disregard for me because of the fact that I was able to do that, because there's different stages, folks, of possession. Sometimes it's just you start to feel drowsy, you start to get very emotional in ways, and it's just manipulating you. Sometimes it starts to get in and it doesn't get that far, and then there's full-blown talking in tongues and face contortions, and then there's even one level beyond that. Luckily, it didn't get that far, but this gentleman, literally, I watched his face move in ways human beings can't move their face without something doing it to them, and it was pretty far along, and I had stopped it, and there's a good chance that it's not happy that happened, because if it would have got a little bit further, sometimes you can't get them out. In fact, I don't know if we got all of this thing out of this guy. I didn't know him personally. He was part of another team. I've never spoken to him since. But I have seen people years later, after these deep grip, possessions have happened, and in a lot of cases, they're still never right again. Whether it's just the damage that it did while it was there, or a part of it is still inside that person, it is hard to say. But it usually has lifelong lasting effects.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that, man. I mean, people have these types of experiences like myself, and I still feel like, it was yesterday. So these things do kind of leave an imprint on you. It sticks with you. And that's why we like to do the call-in episodes. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be doing another caller-in episode soon, because we like you guys to have the opportunity to share these experiences with us as well, because it is liberating. It feels cathartic, in a sense, to sort of get it off your chest and share these experiences. So, Frater, we will be having another caller-in episode soon, won't we?
I believe we will, and I think what we'll do is not next episode, but the following episode do that. So in 2 weeks, Daniel and I will jump back into a regular topic episode, which we'll pick here in the next couple of days, and we'll start to promote that. And then the following episode, which would be 4 weeks from now, we would then go with a call episode. So 2 episodes from now, phone calls. So if you have experiences or encounters out there that you want to share with us, we already have a few people said that they would like to. We will be taking phone calls. For those that don't want to be on the show but would love to share with us, you can send us an email at celestialoddities@gmail.com. Again, that's celestialoddities@gmail.com. We will read your encounter off. We can leave your name out of it and just read it off as a contribution from a fan out there, or contribution. And, we just want to hear what it is you guys experienced, to document this and to stick this in a file that we have of different encounters people have experienced, because sometimes we're able to connect dots. So next episode, topic episode, following episode after that, call in, and then we'll have about 1 or 2 more episodes after that, and then that'll wrap up season 2, and me and Daniel will start to talk and gear up for the upcoming season 3 next year.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just a couple quick announcements for you. I have a spooky Halloween movie coming out that will be free to watch on YouTube. This has been discussed on previous episodes. This is The Phantom Witch. Okay, my old team with Tragic Hero Productions produced a fun bit of a lore, a little bit of an urban legend, and some star-crossed lovers. And it's a fun short film that I am just finishing right now. We're putting the finishing touches on it, and it will be ready to watch for free on Tragic Hero Productions YouTube by this Saturday, the 30th. So be sure to check that out. I'll post it in the Celestial Oddities Facebook group. You can find it on my social media. Second announcement I would like to make is another project we've talked about for a year now is the Bermuda Triangle of Pennsylvania. Yes, it is a documentary that myself, my partner Lauren, Frater, and our friend Caroline produced a year ago that I am getting finished. It needs some cartoon animations, but I just did some more work on it this week, and it's a really fun, cool little look into cryptozoology from a perspective that I feel to be different in the sense that it's not a spooky horror film. It's not there aren't any sort of like tropes, used like you see in a lot of, feature films or documentaries about creatures and cryptids. It's just four friends that go out there and are investigating an area that has a lot of paranormal activity and a lot of esoterica and a lot of sightings. And I promise you guys I am working on that documentary. It's just very expensive to get finished, and I am chipping away at it. So that will be another film that will be free to watch soon this winter. So be on the lookout for The Phantom Witch on Tragic Hero Productions YouTube channel. And then The Bermuda Triangle of Pennsylvania is coming soon. And the only other thing that I wanted to just say real quick before we wrap up is shout out to Kara. I wish you peace and prosperity if you're listening.
You heard it, folks. Well, make sure you share this episode around. Hit us up with an email or at our Celestial Oddities Pair of Normal Guys Facebook page. You can jump on there and leave us ideas, topics for what you want to see us talk about. Just, discussions, comments, doesn't matter. We want to engage with you, so please feel free to join our community. And other than that, we will see you in 2 weeks, Thursday night, this time 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. And we'll pick back up with the best in supernatural podcasting. We love you guys and hope you have a wonderful evening. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon. Take care.